My name is Bethany. I'm 32 years old. I teach adults with special needs how to do the things most people never think about. How to ride a bus alone. How to order a coffee. How to stand at a counter and say what they want without their mother saying it for them. My own mother has a phrase for what I do. She calls it my little job. She has called it that for years, at every dinner, in that soft voice she uses so it sounds like affection instead of what it is. This is the story of the night a stranger sat down at my mother's table and made her hear what my little job actually was. I did not plan it. I did not even know the young woman who did it. And by the end of that dinner, my mother could not look at me, because someone had finally said out loud the thing I had spent my whole life being too quiet to say. Welcome back to Rose Untold Stories. This is the place for people whose work was never loud enough for their family to notice, until someone else noticed first. I work as what my field calls a community living support coach. When people ask what I do, I usually just say I help adults live more independently, and I watch their eyes do the small thing eyes do when they have already decided it is sweet and unimportant. My mother gave me that nod for years. My brother Daniel is an architect. His career was the kind my mother could say in one clean breath, with pride already waiting in her voice. I love my brother. He mostly just went along with things. I got into this work because of a mistake. Years ago, when I was new, I had a client, an older man who had spent his whole life being spoken for. And I, in my eagerness to be good at my job, spoke for him too. I filled his silences. I finished his sentences. I ordered for him because it was faster. I smoothed every path before he could stumble on it. I thought I was being kind. What I was actually doing was teaching him one small rescue at a time, that the world was not a place he was allowed to touch on his own. He got quieter the more I helped. By the time I understood what I had done, he had mostly stopped trying at all. I have carried that ever since. I even wrote something down, back then, on a small card I laminated so it would not wear out. 4 words, in my own handwriting. Wait. Let them try first. I keep it in my coat pocket. I have replaced the coat twice over the years. I have never replaced the card. The client at the center of this story is a young man named Evan. He was 21 when we started, and he had spent almost his whole life inside his mother's house. Not locked in, just never quite let out. His mother had decided somewhere along the way that the world was too sharp for him, and so she had done for him exactly what I had once done for that older man. She had loved him into a smaller and smaller room. When I first started coming, Evan would not look at me. He answered every question by turning to his mother and waiting for her to answer for him, which she always did. So the first thing I had to do was the hardest thing there is, nothing. I had to sit in the quiet and let him find the edge of his own voice, while his mother's hands twitched in her lap, wanting to fill every silence for him. There was something else I did not know back then, something I only learned the night of the dinner. Evan had an older sister. She had moved away years before, for work, and she carried a guilt about her brother that I would not understand until much later. She was not part of our sessions. I had never met her. I did not even know her name. Hold on to that, because she is the one who changes everything, and when she walked into my mother's house, I did not know who she was. The first real thing Evan did on his own was order a coffee. That was it. Months of work, and the milestone was a small coffee, no sugar, spoken to a bored teenager behind a counter who had no idea he was witnessing something enormous. I stood back near the door. My hands were in my pockets, and one of them was pressed flat against that card. He stumbled over the words, and Evan finished the sentence himself. I did not clap. I did not make it a thing. I just nodded, and we walked out, and he held that paper cup the whole way home like it was something that might fly off if he loosened his grip. After the coffee came a library card, then learning which bus to take and where to stand, and how to pull the cord at the right time. Then a grocery list, 3 items, then 5. Each one took weeks. Each one looked, from the outside, like nothing at all. My mother certainly did not see it. Around this time there was a dinner, one of hers, the kind where she arranges the table and the conversation with equal care. My brother had some news about work, and she lit up the way she always did for him. Then she turned to me, in front of everyone, and asked how my little clients were doing. She smiled when she said it. She meant it kindly. That is the part that still gets me, even now. She meant it kindly, and it landed like a hand pressed flat on the top of my head, keeping me the right height. I did not correct her. I said they were doing well, and I passed the potatoes and I let it go, the way I had let it go 100 times before. I had filed it under the list of things that were simply never going to happen, like snow in July. I had no idea that a young woman I had never met had already started paying attention to what I did, from a distance, in a town an hour away, because every time she called home her brother mentioned the coach who waited. The dinner that changed everything was my mother's idea, and I almost stayed home. I had a slow week behind me and a slower one ahead, and the small protective lie was already loaded in my mouth, the one where I was coming down with something. But she was my mother, and saying no to her always cost more than saying yes. So I went. I got there a little late. The house was warm and too full, the way her houses always are when she has decided to host. She had pulled out the good serving dishes. She had rearranged the living room. She had spent, I am sure, 3 days deciding where everyone would sit. Neighbors, a couple of relatives, 2 families from down the street. I did not know most of them well. I took my place near the middle of the table, which is where she always put me, close enough to help carry things, far enough from the head to remember my rank. There was a young woman across from me I did not recognize. Late 20s maybe. Quiet. She had the look of someone who had come with one of the neighbor families, a daughter visiting from out of town, and I did not think much about her. She caught my eye once and gave me a small nod, the kind strangers give each other over a crowded table, and I nodded back and reached for the water. If you had told me that woman was about to take my whole life and hold it up to the light in front of everyone, I would not have believed you. That is the part one keep coming back to. She was just a stranger passing the bread. The conversation went where my mother's tables always go. The children. Whose child was doing what? Whose child had made them proud? My brother's name came up first, the way it always did, and my mother used the voice she keeps for his work, the one that lifts at the edges. I was not hurt by it. I had stopped being hurt by that voice a long time ago, or I had told myself I had, which is not always the same thing. Then someone asked what I did, and before I could answer, my mother answered for me. She always answered for me. She said I worked with people who had special needs, that it was very sweet, that I had always had a good heart, and that not everyone was built for a big career. She said it warmly. That is the part that still sits strangely with me, even now. There was no cruelty in it. She believed she was being kind. She believed she was softening me for a room she assumed would not understand. One of my mother's friends smiled at me from the other side of the table and said, "That must be so rewarding though, like volunteering almost." My mother gave a small laugh and said, "Bethany has always been good with people who need extra patience." I felt the whole table accept that version of me before I had said a single word. Before anyone could ask me a follow-up question, my mother touched the serving spoon and said, "Bethany, would you mind checking the rolls? They should be warm by now." It was such a small thing that nobody at the table would have noticed it. But I noticed. I was the daughter who got sent to the kitchen when the conversation moved on. I pushed my chair back because that was what I always did. I had one hand on the back of my chair when the young woman across from me set down her fork. "Actually," she said, "before she goes, I think I should say something." She said quietly that she thought there had been a misunderstanding. She was not loud, but a quiet voice in a loud room makes everyone lean in without meaning to, and the table began to settle. She said she did not think my mother actually knew what I did for a living. I still did not understand. I honestly thought she had confused me with someone else. I remember my stomach doing a small, uneasy turn, the way it does when a stranger says your name and you cannot place them. Then she said her brother's name, Evan. This was Evan's sister, the one who had moved away, the one I had never met, never spoken to, did not know by sight. She had come with the Hendersons, one of my mother's neighbors. Their daughter had been her roommate years ago, and she was staying with them for the weekend. She had no idea she would find me at that table. And I had no idea she had been watching what I did. From a distance, for the better part of a year. She looked at my mother. She said her brother had not left the house on his own in years. She said that now he rode the bus by himself, and did his own shopping at the market on the corner, and that the people there knew him by his name. She said none of it had started with a job. It had started with a coffee, with someone who was willing to sit in a room and be quiet and wait and not speak for him until he found his own way to speak. And that the person who had done that was me. I did not add anything. Evan was still my client, and even at my mother's table, his story was not mine to decorate. The room went quiet in a way my mother's rooms rarely do. I did not know where to put my hands. I remember reaching for my water glass and then deciding against it, because I did not entirely trust my grip, and setting my hand back down in my lap instead. There is a particular helplessness in being praised out loud by someone you have never met, for work you had made your peace with nobody ever seeing. I had spent so long being small at that table that being seen felt almost like a physical thing, like a light turned on too fast in a dark room. And then my mother did the thing I still think about most. She tried to recover. I know her too well to think she was being cruel. She was embarrassed, and embarrassment makes people say the wrong thing at exactly the wrong volume. She said, brightly, that of course she had always known how important my work was, that she had always been proud of it, that she had always said so. And the table went silent in a different way. Because everyone there had, at one point or another, heard her call it my little job. They had heard the voice she used for my brother and the voice she used for me, and those voices were not the same, and now she had said a thing that everyone at the table quietly knew was not true. Nobody exposed her. She was caught by her own sentence. Nobody said anything. Someone reached for the salt they did not need. One of the neighbor men became extremely interested in refolding his napkin. A chair creaked as somebody shifted their weight. That is how these things actually go, in real life, not with gasps, with a room full of adults suddenly needing something to do with their hands. Evan's sister did not press it. She had said what was true, and then she let it sit there, which took more strength than shouting would have. She picked her fork back up. She even said something small and gracious to my mother a moment later, about the food, I think, giving the room somewhere to go. Then something happened at the other end of the table that I did not expect. My brother stood up. He did not announce anything. He is not a man who makes speeches, my brother, and I love him. But I had also never once in my life seen him take my side, because he had never needed to. He just pushed his chair back, and he came around the table, and instead of going toward the kitchen or the door, he stopped beside my chair. He put his hand on my shoulder for a second. Then he pulled the empty chair from the corner over next to mine, and sat down in it, close, on my side of the table, where he had never sat before. He did not say anything wise. He asked me, quietly, if I was all right, and I said I was, which was one of my small protective lies, and he knew it, and he stayed there anyway. It was such a small thing, a grown man moving a chair. But he had gotten up from the good end of our mother's table, the proud end, the end that was always his, and he had come and sat down at mine. And I understood exactly what it meant, even if he could never have put it into words. It was the first crack. After all those years, someone in my own family had finally seen it, and had decided, in the only language he had, to stand where I was standing. I kept my hands flat on my thighs under the table so no one would see them shaking. I did not cry. I want to be honest with you because I promised I would tell the true version. I did not have some perfect swelling moment of feeling. What I felt, mostly, was a strange, tired lightness. Like setting down a bag so heavy and so familiar that you had forgotten it was a thing you were allowed to put down. The card was in my coat pocket, and my coat was on a hook by the door, in the other room. Wait, let them try first. I had spent years using those words on my clients, on Evan, on the older man before him. It had not once occurred to me that I had also been using them, quietly, my whole life, on my mother, waiting. letting her try to arrive at the truth on her own, refusing to force it into her hands. That night, a stranger put it in her hands instead, and all I had to do was sit at the table and let it happen. The guests thinned out earlier than usual after that. These things do not survive a silence like the one my mother's sentence had left. People remembered places they had to be. Evan's sister found me near the door on her way out. She did not make it a big moment. She just said she had wanted to meet me for a long time, and that her brother talked about me more than he talked about almost anything, and that she was sorry if she had made things hard at the table. I told her she had not. That was true. Then she said one more thing, quieter, that she wished she had done for Evan years ago what I had done, and that she had carried that. And I understood then that she had not spoken up for my sake at all, or not only for mine. She had spoken because she was standing in front of the proof that it could have been done, and she needed, just once, to say it out loud. I have thought about her many times since. We are not close. We exchanged numbers and have used them maybe twice. Real life is quieter than the movies about it. I stayed behind to help clean up, because I always stay behind to help clean up, and because my hands needed something to do. I was scraping plates at the sink when my mother came and stood in the kitchen doorway. She did not apologize. I want to be honest about that, because the tidy version of this story would have her break down at the sink and take it all back. And that is not what happened. She stood there for a while and then she said she had not meant anything by it. She said she only described my work simply because people would not understand it otherwise. She said it softly, reasonably, the way she says all of these things, as if the softness itself were proof that no harm had ever been done. For most of my life, this was the moment where I would have comforted her. I had been trained into that job before I was old enough to know I had taken it. When my mother felt bad, I was the one who made her feel better about the things she had done to feel bad about. It is a strange inheritance, that job. I did not pick it up that night. I told her, without heat, that shrinking my life did not actually make it easier for other people to understand. It only made it easier for her to carry. I was not angry when I said it, and I think that surprised her more than anger would have. She was braced for a fight. She was not braced for me to simply be done. Then I said the thing I had never said out loud in my whole life. I told her she was allowed to be embarrassed by what I do, if she needed to be. But she was not going to be the one who described it to other people anymore. She did not have an answer. She reached over and straightened a stack of napkins that did not need straightening, and I let her, because sometimes a person just needs something to do with their hands. I understand that better than most. We stood there in that harsh kitchen light, the one she has never replaced, that makes everyone look a little tired and a little older than they are. And for once, neither of us tried to fill the quiet. I will tell you something I have not told many people. Part of me, even then, even after all of it, was still waiting for her to put the napkins down and say she had gotten it wrong for a long time. I am a grown woman, and there was still a girl in me at that sink hoping her mother would say the thing. She did not. And I had to decide, standing there, that her not saying it was not going to be the thing my whole life turned on anymore. If you have ever kept waiting for a sentence from someone who was never going to say it, you know that you do not stop all at once. You stop in small refusals, one kitchen at a time. My mother was not a monster. She had taught me patience when I was young. She just never learned how to respect what I built with it. The morning that stayed with me most came about a week later. Evan's mother had mentioned a while back that the manager at the corner market was letting him try a couple of short morning shifts. I had not expected to see it. I stopped in before work, at the small market on the corner, the one where the light over the produce hums and the automatic door only opens if you stand in exactly the right spot. And there he was. He had the store apron on, he had a name tag. He was holding one of those little handheld scanners, and he was helping an older woman find something on a shelf, walking her over to it, pointing it out. He did not look around for anyone first. He did not check over his shoulder for permission. He just did it, the way anyone does a job they know how to do. I stood by the entrance longer than I should have. I did not go over. This is the part one have thought about the most since. Every instinct I had built over years of this work told me not to rush at him, not to turn his ordinary morning into a moment, not to make it about me. So I stood there and watched a young man who could not order his own coffee a year ago help a stranger find the rice. He saw me on his way back to the register. Evan straightened his name tag before he spoke to me, not because he was nervous, but because he was proud of it. He came over. He did not make a speech, and I was grateful, because I do not think I could have taken one right then. He told me, in his plain, careful way, about his morning. He had taken the bus by himself, he had scanned his own pass, he had helped 2 customers, he had bought his own lunch and was going to eat it on his break. The smallest things, the things no one in that market would ever know, had cost him years of fear to reach. Then he went quiet for a second, and he said the thing I will carry the rest of my life. He told me he had been scared, but he did it anyway. Then he looked past me, toward the window, and I followed his eyes. His mother was sitting in her car outside. She wanted to come in with me, he said. He looked down at his name tag, then back at me. I told her I could do the first hour by myself. He said it carefully, like the sentence still felt new in his mouth. Then he smiled a little and added, "She waited in the car." I made it out to my car before it hit me. I did not want to cry in front of him and turn his morning into something about my feelings. I got to the parking lot and sat in my car with the engine off, and I put my hand in my coat pocket and my fingers found the card, worn soft at the corners now. Wait, let them try first. And I cried the way you cry when something you were sure you had failed at years ago comes back around and tells you that you learned the right thing after all. Not the pretty kind. The kind that surprises you with its size. Because here is what I understood, fully, for the first time, sitting in that parking lot with the engine ticking as it cooled. I wrote those 4 words after I got it wrong. After I helped a man so much that I helped him disappear. For years I carried that as my great failure. And it took a 21-year-old in a grocery apron, scared and doing it anyway, to show me that the failure had quietly become the whole reason I was any good at this at all. I did not fix Evan, I did not save him. I only waited long enough for him to learn that he could be scared and still do it anyway. I still have the card. I have thought about laminating a fresh one, cleaner, easier to read. I never do. The where is where the years are. I want to know who is here with me tonight. Wherever you are watching from, and whatever hour it is where you are sitting, tell me this in the comments. Who was the person who saw your quiet work before anyone else called it important? Tell me your city, your time, and the work you do that no one claps for. I think too many people change lives in silence. Tonight, I would like to know your name. A few weeks later, there was another small lunch at my mother's house. Halfway through the meal, one of her church friends turned to me and asked what I did for work. My mother's mouth opened first. I felt my whole body prepare for it. But then she stopped. She looked at me and said, "Bethany explains it better than I do." It was not an apology. But for the first time at my mother's table, she let me be the person who named my own life. My mother and I are all right now. Not healed, exactly. I would rather tell you the honest thing than the neat one. We talk. She has not called it my little job again. Once, on the phone, she asked me how work was going. Not my little job. Work. She said the word carefully, like it had edges, at least not anywhere I can hear her. My brother comes around more than he used to. He never made a speech about that night, and I have never asked him to. Some of the most important things people do for us are the ones they never explain. He got up from the proud end of the table and came and sat at mine. I know what it meant. That has turned out to be enough. I used to think the size of your work was measured by how easily the people who love you could describe it at a dinner party. I do not think that anymore. I think it is measured in a young man standing in the middle of the world with his own name pinned to his chest, buying his own lunch, helping a stranger find the rice, and not once looking over his shoulder to see if he was allowed. He was scared. He did it anyway. Out of everything I know, that turned out to be the only thing really worth teaching. If this story stayed with you, if you have ever done work that no one clapped for, work that only showed up years later in somebody else's courage, then stay close by. I tell quiet stories here about dignity and family and the small, unglamorous things that turn out to be the whole of a life. I read every comment. I hope, wherever you are tonight, someone finally sees what you do. And if this story touched you tonight, please don't forget to subscribe to Rose Untold Stories and leave a like before you go. It helps this quiet corner reach the next person who needs it.